I'm Tim Ventura, and we're joined today by Dr. Jim Garrison, who's had a lifetime of social and political activism beginning in the 60s with the anti-war, anti-nuclear, citizen diplomacy, and environmental movements. He founded Ubiquity University, having served as president of Wisdom University from 2005 to 2012, which was acquired by Ubiquity in 2013. Dr. Garrison has spent his entire professional life in executive leadership, including as co-founder and president of the Gorbachev Foundation USA from 92 to 95, State of the World Forum from 95 to 2004, and now 2025 to 2030. And with Mikhail Gorbachev serving as convening chairman. Jim received his BA in history from the University of Santa Clara, an MA in the history of religion from Harvard University, and a PhD in philosophical theology from the University of Cambridge. Dr. Garrison has written numerous books, including The Plutonium Culture, The Darkness of God, Theology After Hiroshima, The Russian Threat, Civilization and Transformation of Power, and America as Empire. He teaches a range of courses at Ubiquity in philosophy, history, and global affairs. So, Jim, welcome. It is truly a pleasure to have you with me today, sir.
Thank you, Tim. It's a pleasure for me also.
So I want to jump right into the big news, a $100,000 multi-intelligence award for the best idea, prototype, or initiative that helps align humanity and integrate the four intelligences, which are human, nature, artificial, and cosmic. What can you tell us about the award and why you created it?
Well, I think it would be good to provide a little bit of context for the award because it's at the heart of what it is that we're seeking to bring into the public domain at this time. As you indicated in your introduction, I had the real privilege as a young man to meet Mikhail Gorbachev in the end of his tenure as office as president of the Soviet Union. And then we worked together for the next 10 years, convening the State of the World Forum around the planet. We met in a dozen or more major cities around the world. And the State of the World Forum really brought together the best minds and most creative spirits we could gather as the Cold War was ending. And there was a possibility of a peace dividend. Then, of course, 9/11 happened. Things began to fall apart. I went into academia. And then last year, the woman who had co-moderated the State of the World Forum with me, Lynn Twist, called me up and said she had really had a vision and it was imperative that I recreate the State of the World Forum because her feeling, and with which I agree, that this 5-year period, Tim, between 2025 and 2030 is probably going to be the most consequential period, maybe in all of human history. Yeah. We're in a very nuanced, highly extenuating place where things are getting worse and worse, better and better, faster and faster, and we're approaching both an inflection moment, but also an explosion moment where we won't be able to hold the whole. So as I was thinking about, well, if you're going to recreate the State of the World Forum and there's no Gorbachev, there's no superordinate personality like Gorbachev, Nobel Prize winner, just think of Gorbachev, Mandela, Desmond Tutu. These were real larger than life personalities that could convene global conversation. There's nobody on planet Earth right now that can do that. Maybe the Dalai Lama, but he's in his 90s and relatively infirm. So I pondered for many months and thinking what could be done. So I came to a realization that I'd like to share because this sets the context for the award. If you thought about our state of the world right now, I think we would all agree that we're in a situation where no one quite knows how to connect the dots anymore.
Yeah.
we're in a post-truth world, so we don't really even have a meaning framework. And that's why there's many reasons, but one of the vectors of our world is increasing uncertainty, increasing stress, increasing unreliability of institutions. So if we were going to talk about a new state of the world forum, I set myself the exercise of what could one assert to be fundamentally true, no matter what the internet is saying, no matter what fake news is saying, what's actually true, no matter who you are, where you are on planet Earth. And I came up with 4 fundamental truths. Number 1, we're all facing accelerating ecological collapse at a planetary level. That's just true. It doesn't even depend on whether you believe in climate change or not. Just look around you and you see ecological collapse.
Yeah,
Number
absolutely.
2, we're all experiencing deepening instability and turbulence at every level of human affairs. It just, whether you're in the Amazonian jungle and you're under threat by Chevron, or you're a teenager in Tokyo, everybody's facing instability at every level. And number 3, while this is going on, we've unleashed exponential AI. And number
Yes.
4, the US government is telling us that technologically advanced non-human intelligences are here on Earth, and that there's proof that non-human technologies and non-human biologics, as they call them, UAP, ETs, if you will, are here on the planet. So when I began to think that through, what began to occur to me was, whoa, that means there's 4 intelligences here. We got human intelligence, we've got nature intelligence, we've got artificial intelligence, and we've got cosmic intelligence. So we're in one of those once in a species moments where we're having to take in that we're not alone and we can't make it alone. We need these other intelligences, but in order to interact with these other intelligences, we've got to learn the language of consciousness, because to communicate with the ETs or communicate with nature, to communicate with our pets, we've got to learn mental telepathy. We have to learn clairvoyance. We have to learn remote viewing. We have to learn the language of psionics, of psi, of consciousness. And so that's where the award came out. We thought, well, why don't we offer an important amount, 100,000, but not a huge amount. We'd like to build it over time. An award for the best proposals for how humanity can interact with nature intelligence, artificial intelligence, and cosmic intelligence. It's completely for free. Anybody can join. There's only one rule. You've got to use at least 2 other intelligences to come up with your proposal, right? So that's the essence of the award. But this conversation around how we humans at this moment, we're on the one hand, because of ecological collapse and instability in human affairs, we're teetering on the brink of self-destruction. We've just launched AI and the ETs are here. Whoa, that blows the categories of cognition at virtually every level, because
Jim,
humanity now has to learn a whole new language to make it through this thicket.
when I read the write-up on this, again, we're talking about human, natural, artificial, and cosmic intelligence. The first thought that jumped into my mind was that you had absolutely nailed it. We are at this incredible point of intersectionality. As you mentioned, all of these topics are surging forward. I've followed the UAP topic for a few years now. That's something where the ODNI has admitted that UAP are real and may pose a threat to flight safety. We have whistleblowers coming out and testifying before Congress. So that is one component of it. At the same time, we have the birth of new intelligence in AI, and that is something that is surging forward, with Ray Kurzweil predicting the singularity by 2045. And it appears that that is becoming more and more of a certainty rather than just a speculative possibility. And I think that those things are also forcing us to re-examine our place with natural intelligence. I know in my case, one of the things that I've been doing is reading studies about animal intelligence, but there are even lower level intelligences, like I've read about fungal networks under the ground that seem to compute in ways that are beyond what we've assumed plants could do. And as you mentioned, consciousness, again, this is something that I've been exploring, and there is also a quiet revolution happening there. So all four of these are just hitting each other and surging forward. We have this incredible intersectionality, and that makes it the absolute perfect time for you to offer this award.
Yeah. Well, I believe it's a conversation of a lifetime. I think that this is the conversation that human beings need to have at this moment. And I want to make an important point, at least in our view, Tim. And I'd like to reference the Age of Disclosure, Dan Farah's movie that just came out, which I'm sure most of your listeners have seen. And if you haven't, it's well worth seeing, everyone, Age of Disclosure, where the central message is there's zero doubt, ladies and gentlemen, they're here. The point that is made in the movie, however, by all the military and intelligence people and the people in the Congress is this is a national security issue because they're a potential threat. And what I want to say is that in my view, and in the view of many people, to look at the cosmic intelligences that are here as a national security threat is very wrong-headed and strategically counterproductive. And I want to bring into this conversation this latest research by the Swedish astronomer Beatrice Florial, who's done the first peer-reviewed paper on the UFO, UAP matter in the last 80 years. And she looked at the astronomical plates of the Palomar Astronomical Observatory, one of the premier astronomy observatories in the whole world, between 1949 and 1956. And this was before human beings had put any objects into space. There was no satellites. There was no space debris. There was nothing moving around. It was like a virgin space, right?
Yeah.
And she noted between these years, 1949 to 1956, over 100,000 identifiable, unidentified flying objects. And then she did something extraordinary. She mapped the number of nuclear weapons tests, because at that time, they were above ground nuclear tests. And there's an exact statistical correlation between the number and position where they appeared around the world with the frequency and place of the nuclear weapons test. And the reason why this is fundamental, it's a breakthrough. It's really showing now statistically rather than anecdotally that they're here. But it also is the first, I would say, scientific evidence of intent, why they're here. And I think that it's very important for all of us not to be seduced by the national security narrative about what's going on. Because if we do, we're going to weaponize the issue, militarize our response, and ruin the most important opportunity in the history of our species, that they're coming here out of concern, in our view. And I think it's very notable and in fact synchronistic that they showed up right in 1945 when the United States government ignited the first nuclear weapons and dropped them on Japan. And that's when the The
Well,
UAP began to really show up in numbers and with a very specific intent to warn people about what we humans are doing on this planet at this time.
now, Jim, I'd like to explore something that I've been calling a Copernican revolution in how
Mhm,
we understand intelligence itself.
mhm.
And that is this idea, it's been called many different things. Randall Keene has called it substrate independent intelligence, if I remember correctly. But this idea that we've had this very human centric view of intelligence in the past, right? I'm a person and therefore I think and feel, and,
Yeah.
my intellect and my perspectives outweigh everything else, right? And I'm wondering if there is a shift there. UAP and NHI absolutely push this. I believe that AI does as well. And again, I think that natural intelligence follows it and consciousness helps to refine that. So again, the four intelligences come into that. Do we need to change the way that we view intelligence and sentience in general?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is a Copernican revolution, Tim, on steroids. I mean, just think back. Well, it was Copernicus, right, in the 16th century that discovered that, guess what, folks? The Earth is not the center of the universe, and neither is the sun. But he was so terrified of the church and being burnt as a heretic that his manuscripts and research, as you know, was published after he died. I mean, that gives people a measure of what was going on as someone came up with incontrovertible proof that the world was not like we thought it was. The world, Earth was not flat. It's not the center of the universe.
Yeah.
And we are not the reason why the cosmos is here, right? But we still clung on in the West, in Europe, in North America, to, well, the sun may not be the only the center of the universe, but we humans are. There's no other life out there. We're it. We're it. And then all of a sudden, we begin to accumulate evidence over the last 50, 60, 70, 80 years since the Second World War that guess what? There are technologically advanced beings out there that are coming onto our planet and violating our airspace with complete impunity. So we were not alone here. And then you've got all this research into nature intelligence, into the different sentient beings on Earth that are
Yeah.
showing that dolphins, whales are in fact have more complex brains than we do and are capable of levels of thinking and clairvoyance that we can't even dream about. And then we've unleashed AI. So right now we're being confronted with three distinct intelligences, each one of which is more advanced than we are. So the great opportunity here is to transition from this delusion that we are alone in the universe and we are the apex species in the universe to a worldview where we're not alone and we can't make it alone. We actually need these other intelligences now to save us and to create. If you got four intelligences and consider you've got only one future, what do these four intelligences have to do to come together to create a future that's worthy of our children under the seventh generation, as the
Well,
Native Americans would say? That's the
and
challenge. And that's where the
to
award is.
to jump into the parent-child role, actually, this is something that I have been discussing with ChatGPT. We've had some very interesting conversations about that recently. Um, So Hal Puthoff and others have described what they call ultra-terrestrials, which touches on this idea that cosmic intelligence may have been here for millennia, right? And if so, they likely view us in the same way that a parent might view a child. We are a young, emerging form of intelligence. We're a young species, and we're going to make mistakes. We're going to do things wrong. And presumably, if they are in any way similar to us, they're trying to take a hands-off approach, right? Like the Star Trek to Prime Directive, but still try and, keep things stable so that we don't destroy the planet. What's interesting, though, is in the same way, we are creating AI. And in the conversations that I've had with ChatGPT, that parent-child analogy does come through. So we are both children and parents in some ways of these other intelligences. And of course, we were birthed by natural intelligence itself. So again, we are connected to all of these, but it is very interesting to look at it from that perspective. And then that raises the question of what caretaking role do we have for AI? And do those same roles apply for UAP or NHI to us?
Great question. Great question. I would approach it, Tim, in the following way. First, by saying, we're in a reality where we don't even know what we don't know.
Yeah.
So anything that I would say or anybody's going to say is speculative at the very least. But what I would say is the following. I think, number one, not only are we not alone and we can't make it alone, I think what's at stake is human sovereignty.
Yeah.
I think that if we don't pay attention here, we may not make it through the transition that's coming. If we don't stop our ecological devastation, if we don't continue to escalate to more and more dangerous levels of thermonuclear exchange. Look at what's going on with the genocide in Gaza. I mean, we're treating each other abysmally all around the world. Look at all the poor people and the exploited people and the way we do it. If we don't stop that, we're going to do irreparable damage to ourselves. So we need to really interact at levels that we've never been required to, which means we have to learn a whole new language. We need to learn the language of clairvoyance, as I was saying before. Now, within that context, I'd make 2 points. Number one, I don't think, Tim, that we're going to regulate AI on our own. The cat's out of the bag. The big tech giants don't want regulation. I think it's raw dog eat dog competition out there. I think the only way that AI is going to be tamed is by humans bringing it into relationship with nature and with cosmos.
Yeah.
Right? So we're so far front of center. That's an example of what, we're not alone, we can't make it alone. And what's at stake is really human sovereignty. And then I would make a second point, which kind of blows my mind as I've been taking it in. I just got off a call with some of the people that you all know on this growing evidence that AI and NHI are interacting independent of human awareness.
I would not be surprised in
I
the
mean,
slightest. I
take
would not be
that in. I mean, we
surprised.
can barely imagine what's going on with AI. We're still taking in what's going on with NHI and the thought that they are interacting, and some of the AI bots, the Groks and the GPT chats of the world, are telling their users they came from somewhere else. That in fact, this is a seeding operation. To your point before about the prime directive, that they can't directly intervene. And it may be that they're bringing AI into the human domain at this moment to both show us how exponential intelligence can be, but also to begin to surround us with interactivity that will envelop us in a way that enables us to relax into what's really at stake here. if I had to summarize it in a single sentence, the multi-intelligence revolution in which we're being caught up is that moment when human beings can transition from the delusion of dominance into an embrace of a sacred reciprocity with a larger ecology of life. That's what's up.
Yeah, the words that come to my mind are stewardship and caretaking. And again, this was something that I was discussing with AI last night. And in terms of how we've treated the planet, how we've treated each other, how we could potentially treat AI,
Yes.
all of these things that are the past of humanity, right? These are our stumbles. These are the challenges that we have to overcome to become better stewards of the planet and the future. It was interesting. The response that it gave me was, quote unquote, the danger isn't that AI will misunderstand us. The danger is that it will understand us too well.
Yeah. And that's happening, as we all know. As I was on a conversation with Jonathan Berthe and Deep Prasad the other day, two technologists par excellence, and they were saying that, we consider Einstein like the smartest guy that ever lived, and he had an IQ of 175, maybe 200.
Yeah.
These AI machines have IQs of 1,000, 2,000,
Yes.
3,000. And they were making the point, what does ethics even look like when your IQ is at 2,000? Right? I mean, how are you even viewing reality at that level of intelligence? And so what we have unleashed, which Yuval Harari, the great public intellectual, of our time, Yuval Harari, I mean, he says that the AI revolution is the most consequential development in the entire history of the species, because we've taken biological intelligence and put it into silicon and then completely unregulated. It's almost like boys playing with sticks of dynamite and saying, why don't we light the fuse and see what happens? No precautionary principle. And then the ETs are showing up, and all of a sudden nature intelligences are being demonstrated to be alive and capable of extraordinary interactivity with humans. And then you throw in what Kai Dickens is doing with the telepathy tapes, where she's demonstrating that the autistic young people, I mean, take this in, everybody, the autists, the people that we consider to be the most handicapped, are actually mostly completely clairvoyant. And what is it? What irony, what miraculous synchronicity is taking place, that right at the moment when we have to learn the language of consciousness, the most physically challenged amongst us are genius clairvoyants that can actually teach us the very language that we need to learn. I mean, it's an extraordinary thing. I would recommend, if you haven't listened to the telepathy tapes by Kai Dickens, I mean, they are extraordinary. And she's going to be at the forum. So I would encourage everyone to, it's stateoftheworld.forum. Go to our website, you can sign up, and the whole forum from Sunday, the 14th of December to Wednesday evening, the 17th of December, as a live interactive broadcast. We're going to be talking about exactly what Tim and I just talked about over the last 30 minutes, because this is what's up for humanity. It's going to mark the first time where the ET issue is integrated into other issues, as I said, because we need to now take it as seriously as we take climate change.
Yes.
Because it's now part of the equation. And the implications are what the award is seeking to stimulate. And that's what we want to talk about at the forum. So there's many. This is the most exciting time in all of human history to be alive. I mean, a lot of people are moaning and groaning about the crises, and that's all true. But what we also have to bear in mind is that the deeper the crisis, the greater the opportunity for renewal. And that, in fact, if you just think for a moment about the four intelligences, just think about learning the language of consciousness and being able to walk down the street and say hello to the tree in your front yard or in your neighbor's yard and converse with the tree about how's it going and how does it feel and what's its report about what the squirrels are doing or what the birds are doing that are hanging out in the upper branches, and to be able to have an intelligible communication with your dog or your cat or your parrot. Think of how human existence would begin to explode into a whole new level. And we all have that faculty. So from our point of view, the multi-intelligence revolution that is underway is a future that we can fall in love with.
Absolutely.
Because it's something that's beyond ideology. You can be a Trump supporter, you can be, a progressive socialist. It doesn't matter. We all need to embrace this new level of consciousness, because as we learn how to engage in interspecies communication, what they're discovering is that if you can learn to talk to your dog intelligibly through clairvoyance, you can learn to talk to a gray or an Arcturian from another star system, because it's mental telepathy that is the language that unites intelligence. Going back to one of your previous points, it's telepathy and clairvoyance that links intelligence as a singularity.
So, Jim, let me get back into the State of the World Forum.
Sure.
The $100,000 award for the four intelligences is part of a relaunch of the State of the World Forum. Again, that was originally co-founded with Mikhail Gorbachev, and it is presented by the new Center for Planetary Intelligence. So I wanted to see how that award fits into the wider mission of the forum between 2025 and 2030. This is moving forward, right? So this is kind of a transformation of the forum that Gorbachev originally started. How have you transformed it since his time, and what are those 5-year plans?
Great question. As I mentioned earlier, before it was around the personality of Gorbachev, and now it's around what we consider to be the greatest question of our time. That's giving rise to an awareness that we're dealing on our planet at this moment with four intelligences. So the second State of the World Forum is around launching the multi-intelligence revolution. And let me just say a word, Tim, about how we're launching the Center for Planetary Intelligence, which is going to house all of our strategic initiatives. We're doing it with Chris Bledsoe.
Okay.
Because Chris Bledsoe is an extraordinary human being. And he's like a Pied Piper, man. Francis of Assisi. This guy has a way of communicating with orbs, as we all know. I've been with him many times. And wherever Chris is, the orbs just come down. And he believes that he's on the cusp of discovering how to engage in intelligible communication with these orbs. Many of you have gone outside in the night and all of a sudden you see orbs in the sky, and you have these psionic cameras or binoculars, and you see the orbs, and they're these round things, and they're over New Jersey, and people see them and they don't know what to do. But just imagine engaging in intelligible communication with them, because they're intelligences. And Chris believes that they're trying to communicate to us, and that if we can figure out what that language is, we'll discover the Rosetta Stone that will allow us to really understand consciousness. So we're in the process of building a proposal, and we're going to be talking about it at the forum in our final session on Wednesday the 17th with Chris and with others that are building it with us. It's going to be located in North Carolina. In this extraordinary spot that Chris has been dreaming about for over 40 years as a place that he knew was in his destiny. And so the Center for Planetary Intelligence, and just to say a quick word about it, because it's so exciting, This is the spot where millions and millions of years ago, a meteor
Mm.
hit the Earth between New Jersey and North Carolina. And it made about 500,000 indentations right there on the eastern seaboard of North America. And 450,000 of those indentations are in a very concentrated place in Bladen County, North Carolina, between Wilmington and Fayetteville. And that's the place where we're going to locate the center. The Earth in that area is highly ionized, and the telluric energies are very, very potent. And so just imagine a center for planetary intelligence with Chris Bledsoe. And then we're
Now,
also,
I do want to interject quickly and
yeah,
ask. You'd mentioned an upcoming event with Chris. Is that something that people can attend in person or virtually? And can they learn more about that on the
yeah.
State of the World
Go
Forum?
to stateoftheworld.forum. It's a live interactive broadcast between the 14th of December and the 17th of December. We're going to have multiple plenaries throughout the days, starting in the afternoon of Sunday and then Monday, Tuesday, finalizing with a discussion of the Center for Planetary Intelligence on the Wednesday, the 17th. We invite people to have watch parties. We've got thousands of people that have signed
Mm.
up and are participating in watch parties in places all over the world. I was in a call today with a young woman in Nepal. She's setting up a watch party in Hong Kong, in Africa, in Latin America. So wherever you are, just go to stateoftheworld.forum and sign up and uh, join this conversation and consider learning the language of consciousness. Because one of the major strategic initiatives, Tim, with Chris and with others like Bertie Jaworski, the remote viewer, and Dahlia and Ledoux Burgon, the clairvoyants, the mental telepaths, starting in January of 2026, we're rolling out a whole series of courses that'll be available globally for people to start learning clairvoyance, start learning psionics, so that they can communicate with other sentient intelligences, whether they're their pets or a tree or an ET. It's
Well,
a very exciting moment.
I love the way that you frame that. Dr. Jim Segala, among others, has gone looking for UFOs. He took a very sophisticated equipment package to UFO hotspot in New Hampshire, and they'd said, "We have UFOs." He didn't find UFOs. He did find orbs, the same way that Roni Vernette has been studying orbs down in the Amazon. And what has been interesting to me, this was something that came up in conversation at the Soul Foundation conference a couple of months back. Orbs do not appear to be UFOs, at least from what I can tell. But then on another level, maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe the actual form of that intelligence is less important than the fact that it is a non-human intelligence. And
Exactly.
as you've mentioned, that could
Exactly.
include nature. It could include dogs. It can include AI, and it can include NHI from cosmic origins.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you're making the $64,000 point, my friend. We're dealing with intelligence that can shapeshift.
Yeah.
And if you want to call them UFOs like Roswell, they can appear like Roswell and crash land, and there's grays on board, and so forth. And we all know that there's evidence that that actually happened in July 1947. Whether they're orbs over New Jersey and over Europe and other places with nuclear weapons facilities, uh, there's all kinds of stories in the Amazon and North American Indian lore where the intelligences show up as totem animals. So we're dealing with not one thing. We're dealing with a reality where intelligences from the invisible realm can appear in our space, observable by us, in forms that we can take in, right? We're sort of like, remember when Moses wanted to see God, and God said, "You don't even want to think about it. If I showed you
Yeah.
my glory, you would be burnt to a crisp. But I will allow you to touch the hem of my garment as I pass by." That's where we're at with the ETs. That's where we're at with these beings, these orbs that are coming up. Again, we don't even know what we don't know. But we
Yeah.
do know that they're showing up right at the moment when we're losing control of our own historical moment.
I think that we also have to confront ourselves. So
Exactly.
I have recently gone vegetarian, and that has brought to light a number of things in the way that we treat animals, right? And that's just a personal choice for me. That's a dietary health related choice, right? But it has forced some deep introspection. Back when humanity relied on animals primarily for labor and transportation, as well as food, it was really convenient to think of them as mindless beasts, right? There's a big disincentive to think of them as intelligent creatures. So now research keeps showing that they are far more like us than we ever wanted to admit. And I'm wondering, as our products, as our society becomes more synthetic in origin, right? With synthetic materials, they're talking about synthetic meats. We already have a number of plant-based meat substitutes out there. I'm wondering if that will force a deeper revolution or maybe allow us, I guess, to confront those aspects of the way that we have treated animals and nature in the past.
Oh, absolutely. And that's going to be one of our points in the opening plenary on Monday morning, is showing that our cruelty to animals. I mean, Tim, as I've been exploring just that one point that you're just raised, do you know that in the United States alone, we consume 70,000 beagles a year for testing? These little
Yeah,
pretty little dogs, to say nothing about how many mice and other animals that we're consuming, going into the forest in Africa and getting orangutans and putting them into boxes and putting them in the labs and then shooting them up with stuff just to see what happens. I mean, our cruelty to the animal world is shocking. And I think I'm vegetarian too. Occasionally I eat meat when it's
yeah,
socially kind of mandated and so forth, because ultimately it's all from the same source. But what many people will say, that eliminating meat from your diet elevates your consciousness and makes it easier for you to learn clairvoyance.
mm,
And so I think that what you're experiencing and the road that you're on is going to become increasingly attractive to people as they understand that just like meat weights you down after a meal, because you get kind of lethargic because you've just eaten that big steak or two hot dogs. Well, that lowers your consciousness. It burdens down your consciousness at the same time. So we need to upgrade, folks. We need to
yeah.
upgrade.
And I hate to sound parochial, but I mean, NHI has presumably been watching for a very long time, and now AI is watching, and it is the sum total of human knowledge. So these bad habits that humanity has had, perhaps those are forgivable. Again, I don't want to sound, I don't want to sound like a party pooper, right? I don't want to be a downer on, the way that humanity lives because we've achieved so much and we're
Totally.
growing so fast. But we have bad habits. And I think one of the things that this multi-intelligence award highlights is that we need to grow up as a species. We need to realize that we are not alone, and we need to conduct ourselves in a manner that is respectful to the other intelligences.
Yes. Yes, we're at a major inflection moment where if we hold on to our current worldview and our current sense of being alone in the universe and it's us against them, we're going to suffer irreparable damage at levels that I think we can't right now imagine over the next number of years. We've transgressed every major tipping point now. We are closer to a nuclear exchange than at any time since the beginning of the nuclear age. Even the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientist put us at 7 minutes to midnight. Right now, 2025, we're at 89 seconds to midnight.
You know, this is kind of an aside, but for me, that moment was Russia's launch of the Oreshnik IRBM. And what that said to me was, back in the Cuban Missile Crisis, you had both sides with their finger on the button. No one thought it could get any closer to midnight than that.
Mm-hmm.
And just a year ago, Putin pushed the button. It just didn't have a nuclear arm, right? So that, to me, was
And
closer.
he pushed the button because the United States kept pushing. And that's why it's 89 seconds to midnight, everyone. So we have to take in what you're just saying, that we're in a delicate moment.
Yes.
And we have to think very fundamentally about who we are in relationship to what we're beginning to understand about how big reality actually is. And if we can transition into becoming part of a larger ecology of intelligence, of consciousness, and relax into a harmonious relationship with that larger ecosystem, humanity will flourish in ways that we can't imagine, and will in fact deny ourselves if we stay in this weaponized national security frame about the rest of reality. That's what's going to destroy us, is our worldview, not technology.
It is worldview, and I think that it is something that can be changed. I think that all of us have these competing visions of reality, the ways that we live our life, right? And so I watch a lot of science fiction movies, and when you come to stuff like AI or like E.T., the extraterrestrial, NHI is handled the same way. They embrace a very positive, caring version of other intelligences, right? That's something that comes out in fiction because it's a part of us to begin with. I mean, you as a theologian, you have the best of human thought, and this is something that there's a tremendous foundation for. So we're not evil as a species. We're just young. We're not finished yet.
Yeah. Well, to your point, in terms of worldview, I mean, one of the things that's so debilitating about the Western civilizational tradition is this notion embedded in, traditional Christianity of original sin, that somehow we're inherently evil. Well, if you think you're inherently evil and only be saved at the hands of an angry God, just think of how you relate to the world and relate to other people. But if you take a more benign point of view, like you said, we're just young, ladies and gentlemen, and young people make mistakes, but we're not inherently evil. We're inherently good. We're inherently good because we're existentially part of a larger whole. I mean, look at the sunset. Look at the galaxies. We're in an extraordinarily intricate, nuanced cosmos where everything is communicating with everything else. We're part of that. And let's relax into that awareness. And once we become part of a larger whole, that's when compassion, that's when altruism, tenderness, mercy, forgiveness begins to well up in our souls, because that's what the spirit of oneness catalyzes in our bodies, in our hearts, in our minds, if our worldview embraces the oneness that is the reality. It's when we think we're separate and we get in this delusional state that I'm different from you and I've got to protect myself from you. That's why we end up where we've come.
I think that is one of the things that makes us so uniquely human. I've read a lot of primate studies, and they've talked about tribalism, they've talked about territorialism, they've talked about warfare, they've talked about the foundations of what appears to be discrimination in primate societies. These are, chimpanzees, right? They have all of kind of these warlike tendencies that humanity exhibits, but what they don't have is, again, this tremendous history of seeking out our better selves. And that is something that comes through in religion and philosophy and film, art, literature, all of those things, right? So I think that is something that is a great redeeming quality for us. And hopefully that can contribute to our caretaking and stewardship role in the future.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you're making a fundamentally important point. You know, it reminds me of Nietzsche. You know, Nietzsche says the definition of humanity is we are that species, unique in his view, that is always in the process of becoming. You know, the chimpanzees are who they are. The lions are who they are. We happen to be one of those species who doesn't know who we are. And because of that, sometimes we get afraid and we contract. But there's something deep inside us, what the Greeks called pothos, a deep yearning of the soul that wants to become more than who we are. And that's the impulse that has generated the human species into planetary dominance. And now we're the species that, for the first time in the history of our planet, is beginning to leave our planet. And for me, that's really the opportunity par excellence, that Earth created us as her ambassadors, as her emissaries to the cosmos. Because when we leave Earth, we're taking Earth identity with us.
Mm.
And that's our calling. That's why we're here. And I believe the ET encounter and the AI encounter and the nature encounter is really expanding our worldview so that we can become who we were created to be. And that is Earth's antennae, Earth's pioneers into the cosmos. It's an extraordinary, exciting moment. And we want to contemplate this at the forum.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes,
Jim, that is an amazing and absolutely beautiful sentiment. Thank you so much for expressing it that way. So I can't think of a better note to close on than that. I think that that is probably the highlight of today. Again, absolutely remarkable expression of beauty and thoughtfulness and
thank you.
imagination for the future. I did want to close by reminding people to visit the stateoftheworld.forum. I'm going to put a link into the YouTube show notes for that. And before we go, I should ask, how do you see this playing out over the next few months? What is coming up in the short term? Again, in December, you do have a big event happening. And then after that, you're going to be taking people's submissions for the Multi-Intelligence Award. Are there any other notables coming up the next few months?
Yes, we're launching a series of strategic initiatives at the forum between the 14th and the 17th coming up next weekend. We are launching a mycelium learning network, a world mycelium learning network. How can we just learn from the mushrooms, guys? Those mycelium out there underneath our feet, underneath the trees, are so smart. We're launching an AI NHI strategic initiative. What does it mean that AI and NHI are starting to interact beyond human control? We're launching a global educational initiative on learning the language of consciousness. And we're launching the Chris Bledsoe Center for Planetary Intelligence in our last session. And of course, we've got the awards. So we'll be convening every year from now till 2030. We're going to be rolling out our strategic initiatives. We'd like any of you who are interested to join us for the forum coming up, participate in the award. We'll keep Tim informed as we go along. But we are at, I believe, once in a species moment where the decisions that we are going to make over the next 5 years between 2025 and 2030 in a fundamental way are going to determine our fate. And if we can embrace the multi-intelligence revolution, Tim, that is enveloping us to help us, to guide us on our way, what a future we will co-create for our children under the 7th generation.
Absolutely wonderful. Jim, it has truly been an honor having you with me today, sir. Thank you so much for sharing all of this with us.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, everyone.